So, I want to talk through some really cool stuff today. I know it says Microsoft out there, and you're probably thinking that's pretty boring. Didn't come here to have someone explain Microsoft 365 to me, but we're going to talk through some really important issues around this platform. Everybody's using it, and it's been changing a lot. It's been changing very slowly, which is the worst kind of change. You don't really notice how it's been morphing and shifting. And as it's been doing that over the last number of years, some pretty big gaps have begun to emerge. I suspect many of you in this room will be familiar with some of them. There might be a couple that will surprise you. What I want to do is I want to talk you through some of the conversations we've been having. In fact, conversations we've been having is slightly wrong. Conversations we've been pulled into by leaders in organizations like the ones that you guys work in, where they've suddenly been faced with an unavoidable issue using Microsoft. Security risks, exposure. And I want to talk you through what those issues are so you can proactively address them. But to start with, I want to talk about Active Directory. Does anybody here know what an Active Directory is? That's good. Don't joke, I actually attended a conference a few months ago where halfway through this talk, I was looking around, I was thinking, these people don't seem to be really enjoying this. I asked that question, no one put their hand up. Wrong conference. That talk didn't go very well. At least you guys know what an Active Directory is. So, I want you to imagine it's 10 years ago, and I walk into your office and I say, I want you to take your Active Directory, and I want you to put it in the cloud. You probably say, terrible idea. Then I'm going to tell you, I want you to connect it to other cloud stuff that you don't really control, and I want you to connect it to a bunch of applications you've never even heard of. Okay, stuff I'm telling you about for the first time, I want you to integrate directly into that stuff. You're going to say, this guy's nuts. What is he talking about? There's no way I would do this with my Active Directory. But I'm not finished. Next, I tell you I'm going to build a whole digital collaboration ecosystem on top of it, where all of your workers can work and collaborate, and there's more tools in there than you can possibly name. If you attended Patrick's talk the other day, you saw this terrifying list of different applications and services. There's so many of them, all different colors, shapes, and sizes. We're going to have email coming in and out. We're going to have users you don't even know who they are, and they're hanging out in your digital workspace. There are files being shared externally. You don't even know who's sharing them and who's got access to them. And then you've got applications which are in this environment which can be accessed from externally by anybody with extreme privileges. Now, 10 years ago, if I had suggested that to you, you would just be like, you are nuts. There's no way I'm ever going to take anything you say seriously again. But this is Microsoft 365. Entra is Active Directory on steroids in the cloud, exposed to a whole bunch of stuff you have no control over. And this change has happened subtly, quietly, and now we're all living on top of it because we can't get away from this ecosystem. Really, a lot of us haven't come to grips with this yet. It's such a huge shift. The idea of taking your most sensitive asset, your directory, and putting it in exactly the same space as a collaboration space, which is online, used by all sorts of strangers, is a strange idea. But Microsoft had a strange idea, and we're all going to have to live with it. Now, there are some implications to this. And this is where these gaps come up. So the first big issue I want to talk with you about is configuration drift and configuration tampering. This is a big area where we just hear this conversation all the time. Now, why do cybercriminals like to tamper with Microsoft 365 configurations? They like to do it because they know that you and I and everybody has no way of knowing. One of the strange things about this platform is you've got Entra, Intune, Defender, Purview, Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, all of these really mission-critical applications with configurations that if you tamper with them, it doesn't just change that application, it changes the security posture of your entire organization. Microsoft doesn't have a way to tell you when that happens, and cybercriminals know. So they know when they get in your business, I'm going to change your security posture so it suits me rather than suiting you. The data shows this is happening. So just earlier this year, this was Cybersecurity HQ. They reported that configuration drift was, in their perspective, the biggest cloud threat that had been going on in the first half of this year. Microsoft themselves detected 176,000 instances of security setting tampering in May of last year. Sophos XOps, in some work they did looking at Defender tampering, saw a surge over 2 years of 79%. Picus, they listed it as the top 1% of different MITRE attack techniques being used. That's impair defenses, right? Take your defenses, tamper with them. And even Microsoft's own documentation shows that this is a great thing to do. If I can mess with your entry configurations, according to their own documentation, you can see a 40% increase in the efficacy of ransomware. And in terms of device compromise, a 70% increase if I can mess with your in-tune configurations. So this is Microsoft confessing this themselves, right? You know, they're trying to make the case how critical these configurations are, but you have no way of knowing if they're being tampered with. So this is a really huge gap, a really big issue. We all need to be able to have confidence that our configurations are exactly where they need to be, because if they're not, we don't have control of the very heart of our organizations. But it's not just about individual configurations. So this issue gets much bigger when you think about it at the tenant level, okay? And I want to talk about losing control of your Microsoft tenants. So here's an idea for you. Let's imagine a Fortune 500 organization. They know they've had a security incident. They know that somebody has gone in and potentially tampered with some configurations. How would they know whether it was just one configuration or 10,000? There's no way of knowing. And so even if there's only been modest tampering going on, you're going to have to do some auditing, and that could take possibly 2 weeks. We sometimes speak with people who have teams of people who are literally going through. I suspect there might be some people in this room who can resonate with this. You've got a group of people whose job it is to go and just constantly review the configurations of the tenant to make sure they're in place. That takes time. 2 weeks of reviewing before you can have confidence that everything's okay. This is a real incident that we've been involved in recently where a big government agency somewhere in the world, they effectively lost access to their tenant. It was held to ransom, and they decided they weren't going to play ball with the relevant people. The process of reconfiguring that environment they had, which they no longer had access to, they told us 3.5 weeks to get it all back up and running. The rug had thoroughly been pulled out from underneath them. These were the people at the top end of the organization. They just hadn't thought about this. Who would? You know, they're busy cracking on with all these other really critical security objectives, only to find that one day the very fundamental element of their environment is no longer available to them, and it's not just a case of reprovisioning or, you know, putting another one out there. There is no mechanism to do that. How do you reconfigure your tenant in such an incident? And finally, another real example here. A very senior person in our business was woken up at 3 in the morning by one of our customers saying, oh my gosh, we've just deleted a huge part of our identity infrastructure. Distribution groups, gone. No way to get them back. Accidentally done. I think actually happened twice. So they did this, woke us up at 3 in the morning, happened again a week or two later. This sort of thing just happens sometimes. And their estimation was potentially quite a few days to rebuild that. Whilst they were rebuilding it, they weren't going to be able to have their current email infrastructure run, which meant that a whole bunch of people weren't going to get the information they needed. I won't go into the details of their business, that wouldn't be fair, but it was going to have enormous implications. The point here is to say, it's not just about an individual configuration going out of place. You could lose access to all of your configurations or a huge chunk of them, and it can have enormous operational implications. The reason I'm saying this to you is not to preach at you. I'm saying this because the conversations we have with people, sometimes they're just shocked, and they really find themselves in a pickle. No way to recover their business operations because it's the first time they're facing this issue. Now, what's the best way to think about this? I wonder if what I said there is potentially a little bit convoluted, so let's boil it down, keep it really simple. Think about this like a glass of water. Okay, this is the best way to take this important information and re-evangelize it back to your colleagues and to your business. Think about your tenant like a cup. And your data is the water, okay? Now, I suspect everybody here has their data backed up, maybe their emails backed up. This has been things that we've all been doing for a long time. Now, imagine someone takes your glass of water, the water's your data, and they throw it on the ground. Smash the glass, and the water's everywhere. You've got your water ready to redeploy, because you've got that backed up. But what about the glass? Your tenant, your Microsoft environment, is the glass. It's the place your data is going to go. If you don't have confidence that it's correctly configured, maybe someone's messed with your security posture, with your sharing options, with your identity. You put all that data back into that tenant. That's not compliant. It's not secure. You guys obviously know this. It's pretty obvious. But when you use this analogy, it really helps people to see the situation. We're all backing up the water, but we're not backing up the glass. Backing up your tenant configurations is actually super critical. Being able to recover in a situation like this is very, very critical. So it could just be a chip. It could just be one configuration. It could be that someone has deleted a whole bunch of stuff, or your entire glass could be shattered. Whichever state you find yourself in, everybody goes through these states all the time. You just need to have a way to quickly restore and recover so you know that your data is safe, contained in the glass that you've carefully built with your team. Now, this is happening a lot, these sorts of issues. I just found some of these stories the other day, just Googling online. Classic situations. They're almost kind of comical. You read them, you think, oh my gosh, how can a disaster that bad actually happen? But it does happen. People often just lose access to core parts of their infrastructure. Things no longer work. And they find themselves, like I said a moment ago, in a pickle. But it's connected to another problem. There's a privilege problem here. Because it's not just the cyber criminals going in and tampering, although that's a privilege problem too. They've got in, they've got the ability to do that. But also from an administrator point of view, quite often people who delete huge parts of your infrastructure, they should never have had access to that to begin with. So all of this is connected to a bigger privilege problem. And I want to tell you what Microsoft themselves have said in a recent, I think it was one of their digital defense reports. So they reported that 63% of the tenants that they had investigated following incidents were failing on least privilege. Very helpful, Microsoft. Thank you for letting us know about that. That's good to know. The question is, why? Why is that happening? Now, I think the best way to think about this is to use the analogy of a house. Does anybody here live in a house? That's good. For the rest of you, there is actually hot coffee available in the conference center. Soak it up whilst you can. It's free. All right? Let's think about this in terms of houses, apartments. So if you share a building with somebody else, you don't share the whole building. I mean, imagine if you lived in a shared building and there was no segmentation. You'd be pretty upset. You'd say, I don't want this house, I'd like to live somewhere else. This is what we do as modern human beings. You basically say, we're sharing a building, but I have my own segment in that building, my own unique container, my flat. No one else gets in there. We have a few common areas, but that's my bit. That's what modern, sensible human beings do. Microsoft doesn't work like that. The analogy is striking, because very often if you get into a tenant and you have a privileged account, that privileged account might represent a workload. So let's use the example of Intune. My Intune privileged account doesn't allow me to do SharePoint stuff or all that other stuff. However, it does give me tenant-wide access to Intune. There's no real easy way to scope or limit this. The amount of privilege you get with some of these accounts is vast. And everybody knows you'd much rather exist in one tenant rather than 20, because the solution to this that some people end up doing is they say, well, we're going to have 10 different tenants as a way to segment our environment. The complexity that comes with that leads you back to the first problem we spoke about, the configuration issue. Now you've got 10 tenants where you've got to audit and monitor the configurations. There's a horrible trade-off here. So option number one is you have 10 different tenants and you try and segment that way. Or if you're in one or two, you've just got all this extra access. So when we ask ourselves, why did Gary accidentally delete the Intune device compliance policies for the whole South American continent? Well, although he's in Europe, his access, we had no way of scoping it. We couldn't give him his own dedicated apartment. He had access to everything. The irony here is this. This is your most privileged account, your most privileged environment, Microsoft 365. It has the most powerful privileges. If I mess, like I said, with Intune, Entra, Defender, any of these things, the implications are enormous for your organization, and yet you can't create your own self-contained flat inside of that tenant. We were recently speaking with two huge brands. Brands, I could name them, you would know them straight away. They were existing on-premise. They were actually pretty happy there. And Microsoft said to them, you guys need to start moving to the cloud. It's time. We need you to go and actually get into 365. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. They made the move, and they're furious. They're incredibly angry. The reason they're angry is because they found out that the segmentation they had available on-premise can't be replicated in the cloud. Like I mentioned a moment ago about Gary, For them, it's illegal. It's illegal that an individual in Europe, like Gary, can edit the settings of someone in South America. So now they're breaking the law, all because they moved from their on-premise into 365, because there's no way to segment. It's kind of outrageous. Love Microsoft. I wouldn't have a job or exist if they didn't exist. I want them to exist. But this is outrageous. Being forced into this situation is not good for our organizations. It's not secure. So why are we here? Why are these gaps existing? The cybersecurity industry is $300 billion. It's a huge industry. Why do we still have these gaps? That's enough money, by the way, $300,000 million. Everybody in Hull could be a millionaire tomorrow if we use that money. Wouldn't necessarily improve Hull, okay? It's a bit beyond repair. I actually lived there, so I can't say that. So why have we got these gaps? Part of the problem is we're still living in 2010. Sometimes you speak to people, they call it Office 365. That's Office 365. They're a bunch of completely, non-threatening applications. What's going to go wrong with a PowerPoint? In 2025, it's Microsoft 365 in its Entra. And it's just been expanding and expanding. You can no longer legitimately describe this as just SaaS. It's got identity as a service. You've got your email in there. You've got platform as a service. You've got a whole security suite of tools. I couldn't even name them all, and I've worked in this industry for a good number of years now. And you've got an AI poking around, touching every single thing, and you've got no idea what it's doing. You can't call this a SaaS application anymore. It's ballooned out of control, and there is nothing else in our industry that fits into this category. That's the problem. We have solutions for SaaS applications, SSPM tools. We have solutions for infrastructure or platform as a service. We have solutions for these categories, but what if there is a platform that just breaks all of those rules? And that's what 365 is. That's why we've got these unique gaps and problems that people are having to deal with right now. So we really believe at CoreView, which is where I work. I'm Rob, by the way. I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Rob. I work at CoreView. We believe that this demands a new approach to security in this environment. And this is why we've coined the idea of Microsoft 365 tenant resilience, the idea that you won't just look at 365 in a piecemeal approach. I won't just be a vendor that secures the email or secures the identity layer or secures this layer. We're actually going to look at the whole tenant and really consider it holistically. This is a new approach that we're taking, and we're taking it because of these gaps. And because the conversations we have with people, they're still seeing their existing toolset just doesn't deal with this. So CoreView is designed to address this. And very quickly, I'm not going to preach to you too long about CoreView, but I just want to give you a high level. What is CoreView? The clue is in the name. It gives you a core view of your tenants. And really it does 6 things, which solves a lot of the stuff we've spoken about. It backs up your tenant configurations. So tomorrow, if Gary goes and deletes all your distribution groups, you can immediately just get back into shape. If a cyber criminal goes and tampers with all of your ecosystem, you can very quickly just get back to the right security posture. It's a fantastic trick. It means that you can feel secure about all those incidents we were talking about. It also detects configuration drift at scale across all your tenants. So you're no longer in the dark about your most critical security settings being changed. We're going to give you an alert when changes happen. You're going to have a full audit and blame report about where those changes occur. And you can do that across as many tenants as you want. It also enables, like I said, multi-tenant configuration and management. It enables tenant consolidation, so you can live in one tenant because you can create those apartments, those segments inside of your tenant, meaning that you can actually exist securely even in one, or if you've got 5 tenants, however many you've got. Enables true least privilege administration and segmentation. And finally, something we're working on right now is the ability to reveal the highest risk users that you might have in an attack scenario. So some of our product guys are working on this. The idea is we want to give you a view of every user in your tenant and tell you if this person, Janet, was to get her account compromised, is it a big deal or not? It's always a big deal, but how big is the deal? What context, what contextual information can we provide you that shows that this individual who looks innocuous is actually going to cause massive issues if they get compromised? So we're going to be pulling a lot of data from different places to build this. Now, before we wrap up, I want to share one more thing, which I think is really exciting. It's something that we're building right now. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing about artificial intelligence. I am. I've been walking around all the booths. Every single one says it's an AI tool, powered by AI, securing AI. It's exhausting, I know. And when our product team told me they were building a new AI, I thought, oh, gosh, really? Do we need to do this? When they showed it to me, I was actually kind of blown away. It's nearly time to put away the PowerShell. So does anybody feel a little bit uncomfortable about AI? You are some pretty resilient people. I feel a bit uncomfortable about it sometimes. You know, the idea that AI could take away people's jobs, people who have worked really hard. I've been doing some own internal evangelizing to try and figure this out. And the example I keep coming back to is the printing press. Before the printing press, how did you write stuff at scale? Well, you just wrote it. You scribed it. You sat down and transcribed from one piece of writing to another. When the printing press was created, all those jobs were taken away. It's pretty awkward, not very nice for those people. Genuinely would have been a pretty tough time. Big picture, it makes sense. There are some tasks that are repetitive that we can use technology to solve. PowerShell and scripting and manual administration in Microsoft 365 fits into that category. Many of you will have teams and teams of people in your organizations whose job it is to do basic manual administration that very quickly could be solved using at least a sophisticated AI to just do all the legwork, all the dog work. And that's what we're building. And this is really important from a security perspective, because I think one of the biggest risks we have in terms of 365 is overwhelmed administrators. So if you're not sure whether your teams are overwhelmed in terms of Microsoft 365, I suspect you probably are. Everybody knows it's exhausting to jump between all those interfaces. But ask them, what's it like to manage this platform day to day? 40 different workloads, 10,000 different configuration details, 6 different admin UIs, loads of evolving APIs, PowerShell complexity, dealing with external users, all these admin permissions, lack of license visibility. It's just scratching the surface, and then you might have multiple tenants. It's exhausting. It wasn't really built to be super, super usable. This creates a massive security risk, because I'm trying to keep on top of all these settings. I'm trying to make sure my security posture is exactly where it should be. But to do that, I have to keep jumping around. I have to keep manually changing everything. And I also have to be a Superman, because I have to remember all of the details about where everything is. It's almost impossible. And we've got a quote here from a Microsoft customer explaining that it would take them 3 weeks for any project because they would have to extract data with PowerShell, combine it in Excel, analyze it with Power BI, and then use more PowerShell. This was just for them to report on some sort of issue. So just getting visibility in 365 is exhausting. So I want you to imagine a situation here, just as we wrap up. I want you to imagine that you're part of an organization, and you and your team are really concerned that the finance team in your business is going to be compromised. They're under attack. You've seen some signals. Now, the rest of the security team is doing what they would do in that scenario. But what could your Microsoft team do if you were concerned about that finance team? What sorts of things might you ask them to do in all of these portals in terms of the settings and configurations? You might say, let's just make sure we've removed any unused accounts from our finance team. Okay, I don't want those lingering around because that gives extra access. So let's query Entra, document inactive users, deprovision accounts. Let's make sure that we're enforcing MFA, conditional access policies, all of this strong, rigorous access inside of the environment as well. Let's find any external users in the groups that our finance team are using. That's a really good trick, okay? Cybercriminal gets in, they manage to get into one of those groups, they're hanging out there, they've got a level of access, not something that people often have visibility of. And similarly, let's also make sure their mailboxes aren't doing anything crazy suspicious. If you have a finance team member who's suddenly auto-forwarding their emails, that's usually a sign they've been compromised. Where are those emails going? To some random email address, giving someone visibility of exactly what your internal communications are. Social engineering becomes really easy then. These are just 4 examples. You guys could probably give me a list of 20 other things I haven't thought of. So I want to ask you, how long would it take to do this? There's an estimation here about 4 to 10 hours, depending on whether you do it in the interface or whether you use PowerShell. Depends how big your environment is or how small it is. So, this is really for you guys to put that number up there. But we are certainly looking at hours, okay? So imagine you're under threat and you want to deal with this as soon as possible. So I want to introduce you to Corey, the world's first AI administrator for Microsoft 365. So let's ask Corey to help us. We simply write into Corey and we can say, find finance department user accounts inactive for the last 90 days. Corey immediately shows you what's going on, shows you a short list. You can have the full report if you want to. And he says, do you want to take action like disabling these accounts? So it's going to ask you the relevant question. And you say, yes, I'd like to do that. Yes, confirmed. So it's confirming. It's going to remove that. And it's asking you if you want to proceed. Amazing. Excellent. Now, can you show me the same information in terms of registered MFA? Corey immediately can show you this. It can report on this straight away for you, show you exactly which users don't have MFA. And now you don't have to go in there and fix it yourself. You can just write in and say, can you add them to the relevant security group to ensure that they have the right security policies addressed on them? Very cool. It asks you to confirm, just so you have a bit of friction. It's always checking, are you sure you want to do that? And you go ahead. Again, so we've now got that confirmed. You can say, hey, let's talk about the external users in the security groups. This would take a lot of PowerShell, trying to figure out exactly where the external members are in all of your user groups. A lot of time. Corey can show you instantly, and you can remove those guests from those groups if you want to, simply by writing through the chatbot. And it's just confirming, do you want me to remove them and then lock those accounts? Yes, please, Corey. And finally, we can just do the mail forwarding. There we go. This is transformative. For the whole of Microsoft's existence, everything has been done through GUIs and with PowerShell. Both are enormously complicated because Microsoft keeps changing the portals, and PowerShell takes a degree of skill in order to use. Now, your team can use natural language to do day-to-day administration on the fly, to ensure security standards are being met, to ensure your environment is compliant and secure. And most importantly, it's not just that you can have more confidence from a security perspective, but your organization can be so much more efficient by leveraging Corey by their side. So we're really excited about this as a way to help us overcome one of the biggest issues when it comes to securing Microsoft, and that is just the headache of the never-ending work. There's one final thing to say here. Some of you might be thinking, how have you solved this problem by adding an artificial intelligence into our environment? Isn't that going to cause more issues? And we couldn't agree more. It is. If you let an AI run riot and have access to all of these things, you're probably at more risk. And this brings us back to the conversation we had a moment ago. By default, you get tenant-wide access in Microsoft, but we have something called virtual tenant segmentation, like we were talking about, these self-contained flats. With CoreView, you can define exactly how much access that AI is going to get. So you give exactly the right amount of access for that AI operator so they can do exactly what they should do and no more. Your artificial intelligence is constrained in that environment. So they can't go out and change the Intune device compliance policies in South America. It's not available to them. They are constrained within a segment, and that ensures that your AI is secure whilst giving you all the benefits that we talked about. If you're curious, you can sign up for an early beta right now using this QR code on our website, and you'll be able to get early access to this game-changing tool. And if anything that we've spoken about today resonates with you and you want to talk more, we're available at stand 511 just at the back of the convention center, and we would love to talk to you. But thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference.